All right, we're recording.
Welcome everybody to high touch engagement with students as part of the ICCB Faculty Professional Development Series. I'm Whitney Thompson, Senior Director for Career and Technical Education. I'm very excited to introduce this session with Kona Jones, who's the Director of Online Learning and Instructor of Statistics at Richland Community College. As well as Kim Travers, the Distinguished Professor for Industrial Technology at Heartland Community College. So they're going to be talking to you about high-touch engagement with students, particularly in an online environment. And so before we get started, I do want to let you know that this webinar session is being recorded and will be posted on our website later this week, as well as the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint will be made available to you. And then we do have a couple more sessions this week, so I know we're very excited to preview those as well as some discipline-specific discussions that will be facilitated next week. So if you listen to the webinar series this week, you can engage with your peers in the same discipline next week to talk about how these concepts and topics can be integrated into your specific discipline or program. So, and then lastly, I want everyone to know that this is closed captioning is available. So Cheyenne Matthias is doing that for us, so we really appreciate that. So at this time, I just want to let you all know to please mute yourself if you're not talking, just so we don't hear any background noise. But otherwise, I'm excited to turn it over to Kona and Kim.
Hi everyone, and it's great to have you here. 9 a.m. on a Monday, right? So that makes it even more good. There we go with my English. It makes it even better to see all of you today. So Kim and I have had some amazing conversations on this topic, and we really can't wait to share them with you. The biggest thing is for the high touch engagement is that no matter the modality, I know many of us might be comfortable with the face-to-face, never done online possibly, and regardless of the modality, you can still be connected with your students. You can still have a high level engagement with your students. Modality doesn't matter. So what we're going to talk with you about today is kind of tools you can use, different methods you can use to engage with your students, and then how to develop a plan so that way when you get ready to start that semester, you already have a plan in place and you feel confident knowing these are the ways I'm really going to reach out and touch and engage with my students. So go ahead, Kim.
Let's see if we can get it to. All right, so on this particular one, what we would like you to focus on is the fact that you are the important part for a course. You set all of the policies and procedures. You come up with a really good design for the syllabus, the course, everything that's going to be included. You set the tone for what the students need to know. You design it as an online course so that you are prepared for it. You're the connection between the students who are learning the content for the course and keeping them in touch with each other as students, keeping them in touch with the class, keeping them in touch with the college. And so it all comes back to being you are what's going to make a course be great, online, face-to-face, etc. And so that's the same thing here for designing other courses.
So many of your students probably wouldn't have chosen to take an online course, right? Just like maybe many of you, your online students this coming term might be very hesitant. And when they're feeling that hesitation, they're starting to feel that anxiety of what if this happens? What if my internet drops? What if I can't figure out how to communicate with my instructor or ask questions, or I just can't do this, or how does this work, right? So many of our students are going to have an extra layer of anxiety just about being in this new modality. Well, when students are experiencing that level of anxiety and kind of, their brain's just not focusing in on your content, they can't learn. So quite literally, if your students are already coming into your class, so think about even a speech class, math class, depending on your topic, students might already have anxiety about your topic. And then if you layer in the issue of they don't really want to be online, and then think about everything that's going on in the world, right? So students are really anxious, and that's not a good recipe for learning. And so what we're going to talk about is kind of that importance. So the single most important strategy we can use to help our students to succeed in our courses is to care about them as learners and as human beings. And I think that is so crucial. As Kim and I were sharing and going back and forth, and this is what we're going to be talking about in the presentation, it's really all about caring about our students and making those connections. I just recently heard something that kind of related to that as well. And it's just kind of like, you're like, wow, when you think about if we could just care about our students, that alone might be that extra push that keeps them in our class retained and helps them be successful. So how can you, right? So we're all here. How can you connect with your students and foster their spark for learning? This is something we want you to kind of keep in mind because, as Kim said at the beginning, this is about you. Like, you're the instructor. You are the one who's going to set that scene and help our students be successful. So as we're kind of going through this, kind of be continually thinking about how can you do that connection. Go ahead. So we think developing an engagement plan, connecting and communicating with students is crucial. And what we're going to be doing is kind of talking through all of the different ways that you can kind of piece this engagement plan together. We're going to start with instructor presence. So instructor presence is going to comprise 3 different areas. So you've got social, cognitive, and then you've got just that teacher presence. And so those 3 are going to really help you start to shape what do you need to do in your classroom. So for the social presence, it's how do you make your students feel welcomed? So what is it that you do from the very first time you engage with your students? So is that an email? Is it an announcement? Do you call your students? However you communicate with them that first time, how do you make them feel welcome? When they first enter your class, well, if you think about your face-to-face class, right, there's lots of things you probably do. You smile at them, you say hi, maybe you ask them a little bit something about themselves when they first come to class. Well, in the online environment, that you can't totally replicate that, but what you can do is still make them feel welcome. So maybe you have just a welcome Zoom session where students can just drop in and meet you and kind of just get to know you a little bit, and you can get to know them with no high anxiety. It's just kind of a welcoming Zoom session or a welcome discussion section. How do you create and maintain a sense of trust and safety? Now, this is really important. Right now, the world is crazy, things are insane. And if students don't feel that your classroom is a safe environment and that they can trust both you and their peers, cognitively, right, they're never going to be able to do that sense of community. They're going to be kind of shut down. And so it's so important that we really develop that sense that we are a community of learners and that we've got that social presence, right, that we can trust each other. It also leads to just that a strong social presence creates an environment of trust and that it's okay to take risks. Because in all honesty, many of our assignments that we have our students do, it is a risk for our students because maybe they're not totally confident, maybe they're not comfortable with what we're asking them to do. And so they're taking that little bit of a risk by putting themselves out there and submitting your assignment. I've had students say that they just had so much anxiety about whether they were doing an assignment correct or not, they just didn't submit it. And so it's not that they didn't have time and it's not that they didn't want to do it, they just felt uncomfortable about even taking that risk of submitting something and it not being right. And so if you can build up that trust and that it's okay to take risks in your class, your students are going to be a lot more able to complete assignments, turn things on time, and it's just going to help create that sense of community that we're all in it together. For cognitive presence, some things to think about are what activities or assignments do you have that are meaningful to the student and get them engaged. So in the face-to-face environment, right, you kind of have them trapped. Well, online, it's not the same. Even if you're in a Zoom session, right, they could still be kind of looking around or not focused in on you. So in this case, you really have to think about how are these things that you're doing meaningful to students and how do they get them engaged? So are you using real world examples? If you're using Zoom, do you ask questions and have the students interact with you? Are you doing presentations that allow for student feedback? Zoom sessions that include breakout rooms, discussion sessions where students are asked questions about maybe their real life or real data or real information, and they're able to engage with that. Also, what opportunities do you provide for students to think and reflect on what they've learned? And that's really important. If you think about the learning process, a lot of times we kind of allow for this automatically in the face-to-face classroom. So it's just something we kind of do as we teach in a face-to-face classroom. when you transition online, a lot of times you don't even think about providing a specific space and place for students to actually reflect on what they've learned. So when do you let them think and reflect on this? For me, at the end of every week, I provide an opportunity for students to provide feedback and to think about how are things going. I've seen people also do muddiest points. So at the end of the week, what's your muddiest point? So cognitive presence just encourages students to explore ideas, thoughts, and beliefs, and to meaningfully connect it with the content. So that's that kind of cognitive piece overall. We've got a good question. How do you prevent yourself from overcaring when it takes too much out of you? And that's a really great question. I can take it, or Kim, do you have a...
Oh, sorry, Kona, do you want me to keep the questions to the end for the Q&A? No, sorry, no. I don't want to interrupt the flow, so if you'd rather answer that at the end so everything could be expedient, that's fine.
No. Actually, I mean, I think it's pretty relevant right now. Kim, did you, I've got it, or Kim?
I'll jump in on this because I actually just had a discussion this morning with my brother who teaches at the college level and does research and things. And my sister-in-law teaches at a junior high level, and they're both in the science area and things. And it's a very different perspective coming at four-year versus the younger students. And part of our discussion was, if you set the stage for communication, caring, response, interaction from the beginning, we're dealing with adults and they really understand parameters well. I think that helps out because I don't think over caring is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a matter of setting boundaries and setting it up so that you can do what you say you will as far as communication, checking in, etc. The other thing to remember is that a lot of the schools have really good resources. So there are resources through student services, there are counseling resources and other things. And some of that would be, it's not all on you to solve all of the problems. A lot of times it's on you to help create the link from the student to the appropriate resource. And that could be through the college, and it might even be something available through the community. But over caring, I don't know. I don't see that as a problem right now. I think our students really need that from us, and that's all some of them really want.
Oh gosh, I don't know if you could add anything to what Kim just said there, because that is everything. I mean, I don't think it's possible to overcare right now, but at the same time, it's not on us to solve every problem. It's making that connection. I'm sure many of you out there had students with various issues in the spring semester or even this summer. And I know for myself, it was just knowing when a student contacted me and said, I don't have money to pay rent, and so I don't have internet right now. I knew to contact our foundation and to get them hooked up because there's an emergency fund. It's when a student says, I can't afford the textbook, that I know there's like a little slush fund that this group has money for. It's when they say, I'm just depressed, and it's like, we've got counseling for that. And so, yeah, everything Kim said times a million. I couldn't have said it any better. Yeah, just yes. God, whatever she said, write it down, everyone. That's amazing. So teaching presence, that was a great question too, Ryan, like spot on. How is your course designed to promote learning? So for the teaching presence, this is where it really comes in, and it's the you part. So how is your course designed to promote learning? Now in the face-to-face, you don't really think about it that way, right? You just kind of plan out, well, this is what I'm covering today, this is what I'm covering this week. In the online environment, you really have to kind of plan out every assignment in advance. You really have to do that pre-planning way in advance in order to get down to the end and know that everything's been done. You don't have quite the flexibility as you do in a face-to-face. How are you present in your course? And that one is so important. I can't say a number, just enough that students say, when I feel that you're in the course and that you're present, it helps make me feel more motivated to be in the course and be working, because I know you're in there working, not alongside me, but I know you're in grading and providing feedback and reminders. And so I know you're present, and that encourages me to be present. How do you connect with your students? And that's kind of the one that hopefully we're going to go a little bit further into, but for that one, it's really that piece of and I think kind of what Kim said, the over caring. How do you show students that you care, right? What actions do you have when it's providing, you know, if a student completely bombs something, what do you do with them, right? How do you make that connection that they're a human and we're all human, and what can we do for you? How do you make that connection? But the teaching presence is just displayed in everything the instructor does to guide, support, and shape the learner's experience. So this is you. That's that main piece is you. And all of the other stuff, it plays into that, but it's all about you.
So then I'm going to verbally add one more thing right here and go, at this point in time, for those of you who are very much like research data driven and you want outside sources, not just, you know, Kona and I talking with you, two things that you might consider looking into a little bit more would be the community of inquiry, or looking into the ARCS model as background information for things you might keep in mind as you're going through and designing your courses and thinking about interacting with students and, you know, their learning processes they're moving into, particularly an online type of an environment right now. So again, that was community of inquiry and the ARCS model. All right, so the second topic that we really want to cover, and this is where we're going to get into a little bit more specifics. You know, at first what Kona has covered is like the background. What is the instructor presence within a class? And now we get started into how are we actually going to create instructor presence within a course? And this is a very deliberate, very thoughtful, very planned out, methodical approach to how you want to handle your course. And what I do with my students is not what Janelle and Marla and Melissa are necessarily going to do with their students. We're all going to do specific things with our students to be able to get ready for teaching online or being able to do things in traditional face-to-face classes. But when it's online, we really have to make sure that we plan for what we're going to be doing. So some of the different types of tools and resources that are available are all of the things that are listed on the slide. And what I'm not telling you is use everything. Sometimes I think that tools, resources, technology, apps get overused a lot. And I want you to think ahead and be very deliberate in how you're going to use some of the resources and why you're going to use them, and even when you're going to use them to get the effect that you're most interested in and making the connection with your students.
I think the big thing here, and something Kim and I talked a lot about, was just personalizing and creating videos, materials, but that doing some of your own. And it's something that students really appreciate when you make it your own. If you want to go ahead, this is an actual quote from one of my students. And this is kind of funny. I like that you create your own videos. It's like you actually teach the course. So hold with me for a second, right? It's like you actually teach the course. And I'm like, well, yeah, I teach the course. I'm like the teacher, right? And so I think it's really kind of interesting, though, to unpack that students equate me teaching the course with the fact that I'm actually the one creating the videos. And that's not to say I don't make use of other instructional videos from YouTube and places like that, but the bulk of the instruction are my videos that I make for students. So just be kind of thinking about that. And in students' minds, they equate you teaching the course with you creating videos, assignments, like the things that you create, your PowerPoints, them being yours, is you teaching the course.
And I'd like to point out that sometimes things that you do that are maybe less than professional are perfectly okay with the student because it helps you be a real person. Yeah. So a video where you make a mistake in the video and your first thought is maybe I should go through and spend a couple hours editing it and get the mistake out. I don't think the students need to see that. You know, I teach drafting courses and sometimes I click on the wrong command or the command doesn't work the way I want it to because I have a problem with my mouse. And usually I'll just tell the students, oh, I just had a finger fumble here and I right clicked instead of left clicking on such and such. And then I just keep going. And I figure the students learn from mistakes because they're not going to get it right either. So that means that we're all showing that we're real people. And that's more realistic than maybe a perfect video that's perfectly edited.
Absolutely. My 5-minute videos take 5 minutes. So
I'm getting better at making some of my videos shorter when they're supposed to be a really short video. This to me is a really important concept here, is to make sure that you understand as you are shifting from face-to-face, you are shifting from hybrid format, and you're moving into online by choice, online by demand, some type of a high flex format, etc. There is a massively huge mind shift that's happening. Your mindset is really changing as you're moving into the online teaching. There is a lot of time that you need to spend thinking about your course, thinking about your students, and working on the content and the approach before the semester ever starts. And unfortunately, or rather fortunately, this is going to potentially involve a whole lot of front loading of time on your course development. So if you're used to coming back 1 week before the semester and then you're building things as you go through the course, that doesn't work as well when you're doing the online teaching. For the online teaching, it's really important, if possible, to do as much as you possibly can ahead of time to be able to create as many of the modules, as many of the assignments, as many of the videos, so that as you're moving through the course, your focus is going to actually be on the students. And you're not focusing on creating the perfect PowerPoint and creating the perfect video and the perfect assignment. You're focusing on how the students are reacting to the videos, or what type of feedback do you need to give on the assignments. So you're putting in a lot of time ahead of time, early on, and it's not like it was where sometimes strength of instructor presence within your class just carries the topic through. It has to be deliberate and thought about ahead of time. So this is like one of my absolute key topics here. And personally, I could spend the entire session talking about this one slide right here. I could spend hours talking about the importance of a syllabus and how it's going to set you up for what you need to be able to do. The syllabus should be the one document that you spend more time on than anything else for an entire class. You are setting up for all of the expectations for both the student and you as the instructor. It's how the instructor is supposed to be present in the class, what they're supposed to be doing, when are they supposed to be, you know, hitting deadlines, are there options to turn in late work, what do they have to do for participation, how are they going to communicate with you, what's an appropriate communication, what's the timeline for communication. I don't know about you, but sometimes getting emails from people at 11 o'clock on Friday night is kind of disheartening because they waited until the very end of the week to get a hold of me. But it depends on what your course cycle is. For my deadline, I have a deadline on Tuesday. So I'm not surprised if students are getting a hold of me on Friday night. But if they're waiting until 11:50 on Tuesday night when there's 9 minutes to go, I'm disappointed. But if I set the expectation for the students to be communicating with me early, the syllabus is the place to do it. I let the students know, how fast do I respond to emails and phone calls? When do I respond to them? When do I have office hours? How can you reach me during office hours? What type of netiquette should you be observing for our communication with each other? You know, what type of even level of English grammar, spelling, punctuation am I expecting when you have written communication with me? And so for the students to know this ahead of time really helps out. As an instructor, when a student comes back and says, oh yeah, I didn't get that assignment done, it's really easy for me to go back and go, hey, according to the syllabus, the policy is late assignments need to meet the following criteria. You either do or you don't meet the criteria, and then you make the choice of how are you going to be dealing with this, but it really sets the tone. The other thing that I really like about a syllabus, of spending a lot of time on a syllabus, is depending on what kind of an LMS you're using, we've switched over and we're using Canvas. And as I'm creating introductory modules within my courses, many of the pages for my introductory modules come right off of my syllabus. So I have a page that talks about my office hours, how to find me in my office, how to reach me on Zoom, how to reach me via email, when do I respond, you know, phone calls between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. You know, so a lot of my syllabus gets broken out into individual pages. So if you go, well, students don't read the syllabus, one, set the expectation that they read the syllabus. Maybe it becomes an assignment. Maybe it's posted multiple times in a course, but maybe the content of the syllabus is important enough, it becomes pages within your course so that as the students progress through a module, hey, by the time they're done, they've actually read most of your syllabus. I generally do nothing in a course. There is nothing that I am working on in any given course unless and until I have a syllabus. All of my course outcomes are here, my lab outcomes are here, my calendar of what's happening within the course is here. So for me, my syllabus is the absolute be-all, end-all. I've absolutely positively got to spend the time and get this document done. And I'm always suggesting that the students read it, look it over, print it out maybe, bookmark it. This just, the answer to a lot of student questions is it's in the syllabus and then I can help them find it. So Kona, anything you want to add on, you know, my little bandwagon here?
We had some really good conversations about this. I like to do a syllabus quiz. I also know we've got an instructor here in the session, Faith Brenner, who what she's done is tabbed out the different sections of her syllabus. And so that way it's much easier for the students to get to the different sections and find things. So I agree though that the first thing when I go, both Kim and I review faculty courses to help them improve their courses. And the first thing we both do is, where's your syllabus? And we look at the syllabus and we see what the syllabus says. And then we look at the course to see, does your course align with what your syllabus says you're doing? And so your syllabus really is that contract with students. It really sets the tone, sets the expectations.
So look, look, that's right here.
Yes. Yes. Oh, someone also said, don't forget to have a 911 plan for the students. Do they have a plan if internet isn't working? We're getting there. You are reading our minds about 3 slides ahead. We're almost there. No, you're fine. That means you're anticipating where we're going. So post clear communication guidelines for your students. This is really important. You know, Kim, I know that she gives out, you know, and she actually will call students. I've got a number that I allow students to text with me as well, in addition to email and other forms of communication. But a lot of students, and I think both Kim and I agree, really seem to take to texting. It's quick, it's easy for me because I do math. My students can be like writing down their problem, and then if it doesn't work or they have questions, they can then take a picture with their phone of the problem they're having on their math problem and text it to me. And then instead of me wondering what question they're talking about, right, I can just look at it. So, but clear guidelines. When do you respond to emails? When do you respond to texts? When are appropriate times to use that? Things like that.
And I'm finding Zoom is a wonderful way to be in communication with my students. My students are actually really liking Zoom. And so, you know, last semester I had one student who sat and ate breakfast with me every morning while I was in office hours because he was worried I'd be alone. So, you know, some of those communications are great.
We had a question about, do you share your cell phone number? I don't know if you do. For me personally, I've never felt comfortable with that. So what I did was create a Google Voice number. It's free. If you already have a Gmail account or Google account, you basically already just log in and pick a phone number. You can then integrate that phone number with your cell phone. So that way, any text that students send, it just goes directly to your cell phone, and then you can just respond to your cell phone like a regular text. It's really beautiful and really nice. So yeah, I love using the Google Voice. I don't know. Do you feel okay? What do you do, Kim?
I usually use my cell phone because it's just easier, direct. And for me in the CTE area, I've got a fairly consistent population of students that I know I'm going to have over time.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've only had 1 or 2 students that after a semester ends, they'll pop up and send me another text message or something, because most of them have been very respectful. I've looked into the Google Voice and I've had a little bit of problems with the Google accounts through my college versus my personal Google account, because I can't set up the Google Voice through my college account. I have to do it through the personal account. And then I've had a little bit of weirdness on that one, so I'd like to say it works, but I know for me it does not work. But my students are really good. There's a comment out here that some of these things are really difficult to do as an adjunct, and I understand that. I work with quite a few adjuncts in our area, and some of the things that I work with on our adjuncts is start small and think about what's going to work for you right now that you can try, and then add it in. So things, if you want to be in clear communication with your students, it's okay if you set it up for office hours on a Monday night at 9 p.m. because that's when you think your students are available, and it's when you're available. And office hours don't have to be sitting there on Zoom waiting for them. Office hours could be for 1 or 2 hours. You are going to monitor email, and as quick as they can send you an email, you're going to respond. So at that point in time, your phone number is not at all involved. It's just a matter that you are going to be hyper responsive via email during a certain time for office hours. It could be you're on email every morning at 7 a.m. double checking things, and you let students that know that 7 a.m. is the time that you're going to respond to emails, and if they catch you right at 7 a.m., you might do an immediate response on them so that you can be keeping up with them almost in a live format, a synchronous manner there. And yeah, I understand math doesn't necessarily change, but science changes every 5 years. I teach in technology, and boy, this is the first year in about 20 years where the software has updated for my CAD class, but we're not updating because this is the first year in 20 years that the publishers haven't updated the textbook. So I'm used to updating software and textbook every single year in many of my classes. So I absolutely understand and feel the pain of things changing. That is a huge challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone asked, could Remind be a possible other option? And yes, absolutely. I was never one, it was never one that I actually had seen and used until more recently. But Remind is a way you can set up an account and have communication with your students through that. I put the link up there. So creating a student inventory to find out who your students are. And we're really, in fact, just go ahead and switch to the next slide because we really just dig into it a lot further in this one. And so I think this is where that Brian kind of gotten into with the question about when is, I'm trying to think what your exact question was, because I remember at the time thinking, oh, we are going to totally get into that right there. Yeah, a plan. So what's your backup plan? So for our student inventory type questions, so what's your preferred name, preferred pronouns? That is so important. You want to build community. There's nothing more community building versus not than if a student wants to be called Kim instead of Kimberly. You know, I want to be called Sam instead of Samantha. Make sure that if you're calling your students the name they want to be used, that's going to automatically build up some community, build up that social presence with your students. What might keep you from being successful? I get a ton of different really amazing and sometimes sad things in that one. What kind of computer we'll be using for this class? You have internet, how good is your connection? Do you have access to be able to print? That more than ever right now has become a huge issue for students. In the past, students were able to come onto campus, they were able to go to the library, they were able to go all over to print. I never thought about that. I've been teaching my course online for years. I've never had an issue with students printing. Well, it's an issue now. I had a student contact me and say, you know, I haven't been able to print off any of your handouts, so I'm basically recreating them on paper. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's your address? I will print all of the handouts off and I will email them to you. Or not email, obviously that one. I will mail them, snail mail them to you. And so just being cognizant of, can your students print? Do you work? How many hours? Do you have family commitments? We don't have it on this specific list, but something else, both Kim and I do student inventories. One of the things on my student inventory is, what's your backup plan? So let's say your computer goes out, your internet access goes out. What's your backup plan for being able to complete your assignments, continue in our course? You know, are you going to use your phone as a hotspot? Are you going to go sit in the parking lot of the college or the parking lot of Dairy Queen? You know, what is that backup plan?
And I had a number of students who were sitting in the parking lot at the college. They said it made them feel good to be on campus.
Mm-hmm.
The Wi-Fi here was really good. And they just sat in their car and did their work because they're like, well, I'm used to going to campus. I like the habit of it. And sure enough, they were sitting in the parking lot doing their work. I'm like, man, that's funny, but familiarity.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how much that they really do that.
One of the things that I like doing with my students is sending a welcome email. And this is done either, say, the week before classes start or even earlier. I've already started writing out some of the emails that I'm going to be sending to students who are taking fall classes. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that they know who their teacher is so that I start becoming a real person. In my area, I want them to know what kind of materials we're using and what technology they're going to need access to. So they can go ahead and buy the book and I can tell them which chapters are we covering. I can let them know which type of software are we using, and they can go ahead and start creating accounts, downloading software, installing it, so that if there's a problem and say their computer doesn't support the software, they have time to either get a different computer, find a different way to access a computer, work with me, work with the college to be able to borrow equipment. But we've got a little bit of lead time. What I really hate is when they find out the day that an assignment is due, that they're unable to download and install the software, therefore they can't do the assignment, but we're already a week into the course and they're just now finding this out and missing deadlines. And so at that point in time, it really does make it a lot easier to be able to check with them ahead of time. I like letting them know what the course is like. Some students have no concept of what an online course is or what a hybrid course is or what a high flex course is going to be like. And if I get a hold of them and I let them know this ahead of time, then they've got it. Then I also like giving them reminders on things of anything that they might need to know ahead of time. This is a great chance to go ahead and give them those kinds of reminders. So then the next thing that we want to focus on is going to be things that you get to do to keep in touch with your students throughout the semester.
All right, so during that first week, we've got our course welcome goals, your course walkthrough, which I think we had what about a welcome video, like a sneak preview? And now I never thought about sending out my course walkthrough because I do something similar to Kim. Actually, and I send mine similar, like 10 days, a week before class starts. I'm sending out that email. I teach statistics and we use software for that they need to have, and it doesn't work on Chromebooks. So we need to know that up front. But I never thought about sending my course walkthrough that I do out to students. And so that might be something cool to think about. Otherwise, that first week is just, all of this important stuff. Send out the weekly emails, post announcements, find out who your students are. That's that student inventory. And then have that welcome discussion, a welcome Zoom session. And then actually something I had forgotten to include, but something Kim said reminded me, is that because I do have technology that students need to use starting in week 2, I actually have a file that they can only open with that technology. And one of my first assignments in that first week is they have to open that file and tell me what it says. And then and then it's a quiz. And that's how I know for sure that they have that technology and they're able to open files from that technology that very first week. And I will tell you, that alone has solved so many problems with, we're in the second or third week and they don't have the technology downloaded or it's not working on their computer. That one assignment has solved so many headaches weeks down the line for both me and the students.
And it's also important by the end of this first week to very carefully identify students who aren't really participating And are they not participating because they forgot they signed up for the class, they don't want to be there? Is there some type of a barrier for them to be able to participate? Are there resources that they're lacking? And so this first week is really critical to be able to get students into the class and get them involved so that you know that they're there and you know they're heading in the right track for success.
Very true. Here's a quote from one of my students. After reading the initial course materials, my attitude towards this course has changed. This has provided me insight and confidence, which I lacked going into this course. And so we included this one because think about that. I mean, so many people don't really consider the importance and the value of those first materials and that first week of content. And for my student to provide me this feedback that just getting that information in place and having it be what the student needed has actually changed their attitude and provided them confidence going into my course. And so remember that whole cognitive thing. And if students are stressed out and anxious, they can't learn. Well, just by having well-developed and concise and clear materials at the very beginning, you can help set your students at ease and give them confidence that they can be successful in your course. So throughout the semester, it's always important you participate in your discussions. You definitely don't take over, don't feel like you have to respond to every student, but you want to kind of be hanging out in the peripheral, right? You want to be kind of monitoring what's going on, throwing in a little comment here or there. Students just need to see that you are around, right? You don't want to take over. Providing substantive feedback on assignments and assessments, reminding students of due dates. So those two things, I mean, actually all of them, but definitely providing the substantive feedback is so important. If students don't have the knowledge of what they didn't understand and what they need to do to improve, they're not going to get better on your assignment. They're not going to improve in your course. But likewise, just reminding students of due dates. I get more thank yous from students for just reminding them of due dates than almost anything else. So don't underestimate the power of reminding students of their due date. Also, just monitoring and reaching out to students who have not logged in, and then just monitor and contact students who are not doing well and are not participating. It's really important, and hopefully your school has some kind of at-risk system. We use Starfish at our school, and so if I can see that students aren't participating, I can go to Starfish and I can flag a student, and then I know a success coach is going to reach out to them and help engage them. So obviously you should be reaching out to your students as well, but if your reaching out isn't accomplishing things or you think you need a little reinforcement, that's where you definitely want to call in the big guns and have other people at your school get involved with that.
So on this one, we need to make sure that we are working on getting multiple types of interaction within a course. And this is going to be student-to-student interaction as well as instructor-to-student. It's great if we're busy talking at the students and we're sharing information, but things where the students are actually interacting back with us, like we've got questions going on in the chat and coming up with ideas over there. And as instructors, Kona and I are taking turns trying to respond on those. Finding out ways for the students to get involved with each other. It could be things like there's different group projects that they're assigned to work on. They could be doing breakout rooms during a synchronous Zoom meeting. The students could be setting up their own Zoom meetings. They could be using some other type of an app. I have students who do stuff just based on, they'll do phone calls. And I've had some students who've used like FaceTime, but then the other person didn't have FaceTime, so they brought them in as a conference call, and they've done a number of things there. We're also going to have a lot of instructor to student interaction on things like our office hours, or if we're doing some type of a synchronous class meeting. And I'm not suggesting synchronous classes unless it's built into your actual college schedule. I think that gets to be very difficult to put the burden on students of expecting them to show up even virtually at a certain time as a mandatory part of class unless it's already there.
So encourage questions. And I know that might sound like, well, of course, students should just know they can ask questions. But in interacting and kind of surveying my students, I will tell you, many students are hesitant. I have students who will flat out tell me, I'd rather Google and spend an hour searching for the answer than just asking the teacher. So I really reinforce from day one and all the way through how important it is to encourage, like, it's okay. Like, I get paid to answer your questions. Like, seriously, ask me. And I keep reinforcing that throughout what I do. So really important. There was also a really quick, and this is the be visibly present in your course. So it kind of fits with this one right here. So someone said, what about a little video introduction before each module? Sort of like, hey, you survived, here's what you expect. And I think that's really, that is definitely one of those, be visibly present in your course. What I do is just at the beginning of every module, I've got a video where I say, hey, welcome to week 3. And this week it's all about, t-tests and, ANOVAs. We're going to be covering blah, blah, blah. I then go into the different assignments for the week. So basically it's, if I was walking into a class, what would I say face-to-face about what's going on this week? And that's what I do in my little online video. So that is an absolutely great idea. I also see Justin said, I've been doing weekly check-in videos during my online course. My hope is it'll help students see the face behind all the lectures. And that's honestly like, yes, yes, yes. Like those are all the being visibly present. That's what helps your students see, like, you are a real person. You're not just a voice, or you're not just, a text, just of messaging, that you are a real person. So yes, 1,000,000 times over. So remind students of due dates and other activities. We kind of already got on this one, and it's just really important. Students have crazy things going on in their life. I know I also help students of this. I have, not only on my syllabus, but I have a PDF of just a 1-page calendar of, here are all of our assignments and all of our due dates. And I make actually a little box, because I'm crazy like that, where they can actually check off that they've done the assignment. For discussions, because they have to do, post once and they have to reply to 2 of their peers. I actually have 3 little boxes, so they can post when they did 1 and then post when they do the, I know I'm crazy, but students appreciate, and I get lots of positive feedback just for creating basically a checklist for them. Yes. They appreciate that I just reach out and say, like this week, I'll reach out and say, hey, your initial post is due on Thursday for our discussions. Just those little reaching out, it means the world to students.
There is something in your LMS that will make some of this easier. Canvas has a to-do list that's built for students. They have a calendar that's built for students. So if you put deadlines on things, it goes into the calendar. But as an instructor, when you go into the grade book, you can go into a particular assignment, and there is an option on those assignments that say message students who, and your message students who could be students who haven't turned in the assignment. Later on, it could be students who did really well, or students who did really poorly on an assignment, students who missed the deadline. But that students who, based on the grade book, is one of those huge time savers on being able to reach out to all of the students who might have done or not done something, so that you can reach out to them really quickly. I like our announcements because that reaches out really fast, because it's posted, but then it's also out there for them to see, and it comes to them via email. And I'll do a quick reminder, if everybody could mute your microphones, that would be fabulous. Thanks.
Yeah, and just to back up what Kim is saying, it's so important to communicate with students who are not doing well. So as she said, in the learning, and strangely enough, even though we're at different schools, we are using the same learning management system, which is Canvas. You could message a student who got below a certain score. You can also go to New Analytics, and you can message students based on their overall grade. You can message them based on different things, different performance activities, whether they viewed a page or not. So if you can tell this group of students didn't do that, you can actually message them. So you want to message students who aren't doing well, but you also want to communicate with students who are doing great. I've got a really good example. I like to message students who are doing super amazing, just randomly. I just pick 2 or 3 students a week and just say, hey, you're doing great. That last paper, the last assignment, And I had a student who replied back, thank you. I really, really I needed this today. And so even though it's she was doing amazing in my class, you never know what kind of day your students are having, or maybe how much self-esteem they have with your course. And so giving them that little push can be huge for the students. And then Yes, I've got someone saying the student said the same, as in it was very appreciated and unexpected. And so isn't it wonderful to happily surprise our students, right? And then just
And I'm
feedback,
going to keep a
feedback, feedback.
checklist on that, because for me, I want to remember and make sure that I don't happily contact half of the students, but not the other half of the students. And so
Oh,
I'm probably going to go through and add something in on my own,
yeah.
checklist of communication, my version of attendance of, did I remember to go and send that specific and direct email for no real purpose necessarily? Did I make sure I touched points with each of the students? And if my goal was to do that by halfway through the semester, and I realize in week 7 that I got 3 students I didn't touch bases with that way, it's time for me to send 3 more emails. And I'm not talking about emails I spend hours crafting. I'm talking about a quick email of, hey, how's your day going? You're doing a fabulous job on such and such. Make sure you get a hold of me for a Zoom meeting. I haven't seen you in my office hours. I'm really looking forward to talking. Whatever, but it would be nice to do that and make sure you hit them all.
Yeah. And it is just those little extra touch points, those little extra connections. And then never underestimate just the power, the value of feedback. Seriously, feedback is amazing. Some feedback I got from one of my students is, I enjoy the feedback replies from you. It makes me feel as though you're invested and not just here. And how sad that the student would even think I'm just here versus I'm not. I mean, why? I mean, yes, heck yes, I'm invested. I want all of you to get amazing grades and learn, my content. But for the student to say, I enjoy your feedback, like, really, you enjoy it? Most students, how much do your students normally say that they like getting feedback from you? And so this is, if you can offer helpful suggestions, be sincere, be specific, and be timely. And those are all so important when you're providing feedback. But the biggest thing is just make sure you're providing it to your students.
So here I want to remind yourself, and we've kind of talked about this, you need to be kind to yourselves. We're all working really hard. This is a little bit of a different environment for all of us to be teaching in, to be interacting with our students. And so there's a couple things here that I want to point out. And number one is, your course designs are not going to be perfect the first time out. It's okay. Don't lose sleep. Don't beat yourself up on it. Be kind to yourself and go, you put some thought into it. You did the best you possibly could for right now. As you're teaching, you're going to come up with brilliant and wonderful ideas that can be implemented later or even next semester. It is perfectly okay to figure out it's good enough for now and it can be better later on. We make a lot of mistakes as we're going through and we're teaching. We do that when we're face-to-face. It's going to happen online the same way. And so my goal and my hope for you is that next semester you make new mistakes. That the mistakes that you made this semester, that you learned from them, the same way we want our students to learn from mistakes, and that we go on and we get to make brand new mistakes next semester when we teach the class again. And then the last thought on this one is, students never ever sign up for a class wanting to fail the class. They really want to learn the material. They want to do well. They want to pass the class. But it doesn't mean that passing a class is always going to be an ability or even a priority. We've seen students who've had very shifting priorities based on changing family situations, work situations, dealing with illness, dealing with all of a sudden everybody in the family is at home. Somebody has a job, has a different job, has no job. The technology access is very different. The internet access is not what they needed. They were counting on being on campus. They need to be accessing support services, etc. So our students are in a state of fluctuation, the kind of which we have never seen before. Everybody says we're in unprecedented times. Everybody is, and it's not just your students, it's also you. So in this case, be kind to yourself and expect that weird things are going on.
Absolutely. So I think this kind of goes back to, so you remember at the beginning, we said, how can you connect with students and foster their spark for learning? So now that we're kind of at our conclusion, we're hoping that you've got some ideas, that you've got maybe things that you've been doing that you're like, no, I'm going to keep doing those, or I'm going to amp them up. We've got someone who just said, for anonymous surveys feedback. They could use Google Forms if you're LMS. In some LMSs, you can do anonymous ones. If not, you can definitely use Google Forms, things like that. But just the biggest thing is, how can you connect with your students? I mean, even if there's just a couple things that you're like, you know what, I'm going to reach out and do this, or I'm going to create a couple videos. Just kind of be thinking, what can you do?
So does anybody have ideas on what we should do to help be able to connect with our students and to me it's a big and really convince them that they want to learn the content?
Yes, and that's the big thing. I mean, I teach statistics. At least Kim's students want to be there because they want to have a job in this industry. My students are students who needed one more math class to graduate, and it was my class or college algebra. So basically they're in my class because I won over college algebra, right? So I do not have the students who want to be in my class. And amazingly enough, by the end of almost every single semester, I have students saying, your class was fun. Your class was my favorite class this semester. So it's not the topic. I don't care what, I mean, if I can teach statistics and students come out of it saying your class was fun, I enjoyed it, you know, those types of things, I don't care what your topic is, you can create that spark for learning. But it all comes back to connecting with your students.
Can I unmute myself, or do you want me to type in the chat box, Conan?
No, go for it, talk.
Or someone else, like, I don't want to be hogging the limelight.
No, go.
No, because I don't want to feel like I'm one of those students who keeps everybody till.
No, we need those students. We need you in this.
Yeah.
We don't. No, I'm not. Going back to your welcome video and based on what Mr. Cobb said, I think what Justin said is like in your introduction video, you could create Easter eggs like, you know, did I say where I was from? What color was my dog? Or, you know, did I say something about my own fears? Something like where, I don't know, like as you said earlier, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like you also feeling their pain. You may have a more stable job than them, but at the same time, you feel their pain. Now I know at the same time, there's also how much time you put into it versus what you get back. But as you said earlier, don't be afraid to take risks. So what about a video like where you said, you say something wrong, like you say a word like people competing over the internet or something silly, and you just go like, you know what, forget it. So the video has, as Justin said, has Easter eggs in it, where in an assignment they're like, oh, I have to go back and watch the video. And it's sort of the spark plug for the course, right? Mm-hmm. So, but as I said, there's no, to me, I think just like in your regular classroom, you want to create the atmosphere like you're here for the students, you're not unreproachable, and I'll let someone else jump in, sorry.
Well, it's funny you said that with the Easter egg comment. I actually had one video where I swear I couldn't make a coherent sentence put together, and finally I got almost done with the video and I said, I tell you what, if you go through and count how many mistakes I made in this video and email me with that number, I will give you extra credit because you stuck with me through it. So I've done that. I've gotten into the middle of the video and all of a sudden paused and said, you know, if you email me and tell me your top 3 things you've gotten so far out of this video. So I normally like to make them work a little bit for it, but I have totally integrated Easter eggs all over my class. And it's just a fun thing. And that's another thing. Don't be afraid to have fun. I like to integrate games and humor and things like that into my class. I think it just adds a little bit more of you into that class.
I think anything you can do to take the stress off makes it a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. So if you simply accept the fact that your videos aren't likely to be perfect, it's okay. You move on from there. And depending on what your access to technology is, that may or may not be an easy thing to do a lot of videos. Mm-hmm. It may be that you have to rely on written feedback or even screen captures and things, because there were times where I had very little internet and I was doing good to be able to send my students emails. Videos weren't going to be an option.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even consider using your phone. I've been amazed at phones and iPads to create the video and then upload it when people have had internet access, because I've had some faculty who they just used their phone and just made like a video like, hi everyone, it's still me, I'm still here. How are things going? And the students loved it. So yeah, low tech, there's nothing wrong with low tech at all. And I think we're at time.
I was gonna say we are at time. It is 10 o'clock. If anybody has questions, we're happy to answer, emails, etc. And it was great to spend a little bit of time with you this morning. Thanks to those of you who were able to ask questions or post them into the chat for us.
Yes. Good luck in the fall. You can do this. You can.
All right, we will pause just for a few minutes to see if there are questions, but at this time, I just want to remind you that this session was recorded and the recording will be available later, as well as the PowerPoint on the ICCB website where you found the Zoom login information. So I just want to thank Kona and Kim, and again, I thought this was a really engaging session. I look forward to all the improvements that I think that it will contribute to our faculty out in the field who are really wanting to connect with our students. So any other last minute questions? And their contact information is there, so I'm sure they would be happy to take any questions via email as well.
Have a great day, everyone. Hope this is a good start to the rest of your week. Go out and be motivated and excited.